Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new episode from Solo Leveling Season 3. Before we dive into the intense events of Episode 8, here's a quick reminder. If you haven't already seen Episode 7, you definitely need to catch up. Episode 8 picks up right where things left off. And trust me, it won't make much sense unless you've seen what led up to it. So pause here. Check that out if needed, and once you're ready, let's get into the action.
The inspector asked Jin Woo how he knew about the double dungeon opening. Jin Woo replied that the message had come directly to him, something only he could see in his mind. The inspector looked at him skeptically, unsure if Jin Woo was joking, especially considering how many lives had been lost. Just then, Cha Hai-in walked up and asked if he was all right. Jin Woo said he was fine, but as he spoke, he started swaying. He mumbled something about being a bit tired and collapsed. Meanwhile, over in Japan, massive trucks were arriving near a newly opened gate, carrying a staggering 200,000 tons of magic crystals.
National-level hunter Yuri Orlov stood at the scene, watching calmly. He planned to channel the energy from the crystals into a massive barrier that would seal the gate and then absorb the leftover mana himself. But all of a sudden, something didn't feel right. The problem wasn't with the barrier, it was a presence. He could sense eyes on him. He spun around, shouting at whoever was there to show themselves. His companion looked confused, asking if Yuri was imagining things. After all, the gate wasn't scheduled to open until tomorrow, but Yuri just muttered, "I never said it was a person." Up on a nearby rooftop, a mysterious figure watched with a cold gaze. Ah, keen senses. Not surprising, given where his powers come from. But now, it finally begins. A catastrophe is coming. Back near the portal, a group of hunters questioned the presence of military forces. Modern weapons were pretty much useless against monsters. One of them said that if Yuri Orlov fell, the soldiers would at least buy the hunters some time. A girl called it pointless cannon fodder, but another hunter replied, "So are we. That's just how helpless humans are when disaster strikes." Yuri Orlov walked toward the gate, pleased by the amount of magic crystals surrounding it. If everything went smoothly, he believed he could solo clear the S-rank gate. He joked to his companion that it'd be quite the achievement, if not for that other hunter who was already more worthy of the title. He pulled a flask from his pocket and took a swig, saying he needed to ease the tension before putting on a good show. He then asked how many top-tier hunters existed worldwide. The man answered, 15. Yuri scoffed, saying that wasn't many. Then he asked where the Americans were. Weren't they supposed to send support? The man explained that it wasn't just Japan. S-rank gates had started opening in India and across the globe. Resources were stretched thin. Yuri nodded, realizing the world was facing a full-blown crisis. But suddenly, the gate behind him started to stir. And at that very moment, Jin Woo opened his eyes in a hospital bed. Jin Ho burst through the door, overwhelmed with emotion. He rushed to his mentor's side, crying and asking why he had taken so long to wake up. They thought he was dead. Jin Woo, still groggy, realized he'd been unconscious for 3 days. He felt totally drained, like his body had finally forced him to rest. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't forget what he saw in the double dungeon. Snapping out of his thoughts, he urgently asked Jin Ho what had happened. Jin Ho, confused by the question, said he didn't really understand what his master meant, but then he brought up the S-rank gate that had appeared in Japan. As soon as it opened, massive giants began pouring out, creatures so grotesque and enormous that even the top hunters were stunned. Normally, A-rank and above dungeons would have boss monsters, but this was on another level. Yuri Orlov wasn't fazed, though. He launched his attack, shouting at the giants while activating his barrier with the power of the floating magic crystals. One of the giants swung its massive axe and slammed into the barrier. Yuri laughed, taunting the creature and saying he didn't expect to see such monsters from a gate like this. He was sure his barrier would hold. But then, something terrifying happened. A monstrous hand began to push through the gate, and in a flash, a colossal giant, much larger than the rest, emerged, shoving a smaller one aside like a toy. This giant stepped forward, and with a single strike, split Yuri's barrier in two. Yuri stood there in shock,
unable to process what he'd just seen. Back in Korea, Jinwoo realized the Japanese raid had already failed. At that time, Jinwoo's father, Jin-ho's dad, was asleep at his office. He slowly woke up as one of his assistants entered and asked how long he'd been out. He replied, 23 hours and 46 minutes. Any longer, and they would have sent me to the hospital. Then he shared two pieces of news. The first was that one of the patients who had the same incurable disease as Jinwoo's mother had awakened. It was beyond belief. No one thought such an illness could be cured. The second piece of news was about visitors, and just then, a girl entered the office looking surprised. She asked him directly, "Wait, you were sick too?"
A towering titan seized Hunter Yuri Orlov and swallowed him whole. Despite the heavy artillery and tanks relentlessly firing at the giants pouring out of the gate, their attacks were completely ineffective. These colossal beings were simply too strong. No missile or cannon could scratch them. Hunters on the battlefield began urging civilians to understand. Conventional weapons were useless against magical creatures like these. Jin Woo then stepped forward and began giving orders to the hunters around him, commanding them to confront the giants coming through the portal. Together, they launched an attack on one of the towering monsters. A female hunter wielding a katana soared through the air, aiming to blind the giant, but the creature noticed them and responded with a violent swing of its massive axe. The hunters quickly realized that despite the giant's enormous frame, it was shockingly fast and incredibly powerful. From high above in a news helicopter, reporters broadcasted the chaos unfolding across Tokyo, describing the horrific scene playing out below. Jin Woo, watching from his living room, felt as if the world had descended into a living nightmare. The entire planet watched with bated breath, anxious to see how this life-or-death struggle would play out. If the hunters failed, this tragedy could mirror the Jeju Island incident, and this time, the consequences might engulf all of Asia. As Jin Woo debated whether to intervene, his sister's voice rang out from behind the door, begging him not to go. He asked her again, did she really want him to stay? She began to answer, already assuming he'd leave anyway. What she didn't expect was his calm response, saying he had no intention of going anywhere for now. Too much had happened, and he needed time to rest. As he walked past her, he gently patted her head and reassured her not to worry. Later, Jinwoo sat on a bench in a park nearby and summoned his shadow. He started reminiscing, mentioning how he'd been watching old Korean dramas while taking care of Jinna. Maybe he shouldn't admit that, but it was probably obvious anyway. When he asked how his sister was doing, the reply was brief. She was asleep in bed, like usual. He realized that the earlier traumatic incident had left a deep scar on her. Even after all these years, she hadn't moved on. Jinwoo still didn't know what to do for her. Just then, a car approached, and moments later, he found himself sitting in a corporate office. There, Jin-ho's father introduced himself as Yu, chairman of the Yugen Construction Company. Yu handed Jinwoo a check, clarifying that he didn't believe money could buy everything, especially not someone like Jinwoo, a top-ranked hunter. His intentions, he claimed, were sincere. Jinwoo understood that this discussion was meant to remain private. Judging by Yu's demeanor, it didn't seem like he was trying to recruit Jinwoo into his guild. When asked what Yu needed, the chairman revealed that he had the same terminal illness that once plagued Jinwoo's mother. Jinwoo asked if Jin-ho knew, but Yu admitted only 3 people were aware: his wife, doctor, and secretary. Now, Jinwoo was the 4th. Yu explained that while searching for a cure, someone had been successfully healed of the disease. Coincidentally, or maybe miraculously, that person was Jinwoo's mother. Now, Yu needed help. He promised to never forget Jinwoo's kindness if he agreed. Jinwoo felt a weight in his chest. The battle in Japan was raging, and reporters in helicopters were filming the city being torn apart. Gigantic beasts destroyed buildings, ripped trees from the ground, and devoured people. It was as if they were bent on erasing humanity itself. One giant, in particular, stood guard at the gate. Unlike the others, it didn't attack mindlessly. It seemed to be protecting something. Or someone. A cameraman noted that the giant, while clearly breathing and moving, felt unnatural,
almost like it had been programmed with a specific task. A passenger in the helicopter responded, saying that if defeating it were so simple, ordinary weapons would have worked by now. Out of 30 monsters, only 2 had been taken down. The reporters wondered how long they'd been outside. The operator monitoring time said it had been 2 days. The city was crumbling into ruins, and there was no telling how long the defense could hold. Back in Korea, Jin Woo spoke with Jin Ho in his office, saying he planned to go to Japan. Jin Ho strongly objected, saying the news from there was worse than anything they'd seen before, even worse than the chaos on Shenzhou Island. Jin Ho pointed out that they had never faced monsters of this magnitude before, but Jin Woo acknowledged the risk and said that if they succeeded, their guild's name would rise in fame. As he looked at Jin Ho, he sensed even his closest ally was starting to doubt him. The situation was dire. Yet, Jin Ho suddenly had a change of heart.
He raised his arms, showed a photo, and broke into tears, saying he wasn't here just to fix mistakes. He wanted to stand by his mentor, no matter what. Jin Woo was stunned to hear such emotional words from someone like Jin Ho. The young hunter insisted on joining him, begging to be taken along. Though moments ago he had tried to talk Jin Woo out of it, he now seemed determined. Jin Woo asked if he was serious, and Jin Ho, with unwavering resolve, confirmed that he trusted Jin Woo's judgment completely. As Jin Woo stood up to leave, he joked that he didn't care about Japan anyway. It was time to call it a day. They had done enough for now. But once outside, Jin Woo reflected on something troubling. He couldn't summon his shadow army yet, and whoever had created this disaster was likely just as powerful as he was, perhaps even stronger. There were still beings in the world who could rival his strength. The world was vast, and it was time to accept that he couldn't fix everything alone. He wasn't some superhero. When he returned home, he greeted his mother, who was glad to see him, and invited him to dinner. At the table, he asked about his sister. His mother explained she had no appetite and was resting. As they ate, Jin Woo thought back to his conversation with Jin Ho's father. When he had declined to help, Yu had pleaded for at least some information about how his mother was cured. Jin Woo said that if he knew, he would have already used that knowledge to help others, or even profit from it. As Jin Woo left the building and descended in the elevator, he kept thinking about Yu. Something felt off. Was he really ill? Or was there another agenda? The sacred water of life was limited. He had to be cautious. The request had caught him off guard, but it didn't interest him, and so he made his decision. Turning to his mother, he said he would be right back. He had accepted that there were others out there stronger than him, but that wasn't a reason to stop. He needed to go and fight. His mother, while washing dishes, remarked that his father had once run to respond to an emergency call even in the middle of dinner. She offered to help him prepare. Upstairs, his sister overheard everything. Silent tears streamed down her face as she curled under a blanket. Jinwoo entered her room and asked if she was asleep. She nodded. He asked if they could talk, but she declined, saying she was tired. He sat beside her anyway, unsure how to begin. He started by mentioning that he had nearly died recently, but quickly realized it was the wrong approach. He clarified that while danger was common for him, this time was different. Still, he was thankful to be alive and to have returned home. He promised her that he would come back again. As he gently touched her head, he expressed gratitude for her love, her concern, and her wish for him to stay. But his sister couldn't hold back anymore and broke into tears, crying that he was going to leave anyway. Jinwoo calmly promised that wherever he went, he'd always look after her. She had nothing to fear. The next day, a press conference was held by the association's president, with cameras capturing every moment. When Jinwoo made his appearance and spoke his mind, the room buzzed with tension. He and the president shook hands before departing. A few hours later, at the airport, Jin Ho arrived carrying a bulky bag of gear. He saw Jinwoo waiting, scratching his head. Apparently, their partner was running late. Soon after, Jin Ho and the Ujin Guild boarded their flight, eager to make their mark.
Meanwhile, in Japan, soldiers scrambled to evacuate civilians. One soldier explained to a doctor that they could only save a few of the wounded, 3 or 4 at most. The doctor was stunned. 10 patients still needed help and couldn't move on their own. The soldier responded that now wasn't the time for sentiment. Death was everywhere, and they had to prioritize survival. But the doctor refused to abandon them. Inspired, the soldier decided to stay too. He vowed to get everyone to safety somehow. Suddenly, giants rounded the corner and began devouring soldiers. Bullets did nothing to stop them. Just as one soldier tried to drag the doctor away, a colossal shadow struck a giant with immense force, sending it flying and crushing buildings in its wake. Stunned, the soldier looked up to see a giant shadow warrior, equal in size to the monsters. Then, a man walked past him.
The stranger warned that the area was dangerous and suggested luring the remaining giant away from the hospital. Debris from a collapsing building rained down, threatening civilians. Just in time, Jinwoo raised his massive shield and protected everyone, urging calm and focusing on the evacuation. He told Jinwoo he'd handle the defense while Jinwoo took on the remaining monsters. With a nod, Jinwoo commanded his shadow army to strike. His towering shadow soldier struck down another giant. Jinwoo leapt into action, bounding onto the soldier's back, jumping even higher, and cleaving a giant in half with a single slash. Meanwhile, hunters in the eastern United States discussed the news of Jinwoo's arrival in Japan. Some doubted he'd survive. They pointed out that unlike them, who were powered up by a powerful benefactor, Jinwoo fought alone. They debated his chances, with one claiming Jinwoo's arrogance would lead to his end. Others even bet on how long he would last. The leader of the Seekers Guild, however, confidently wagered all their guild buildings on Jinwoo's safe return.